IT Innovator CIO Dave Seibert joins us this week to kick off the 2022 calendar year with news from Ingram, Sophos, CES, and more, plus a special guest interview with Zix's Justin Gilbert on Microsoft's new commerce experience. It's Channel Pro Weekly number 210, Pockets of Fun. Did you know that AppRiver is now part of OpenText? There's no better time to discover a comprehensive end-to-end platform that offers best-in-class data protection, security, and productivity solutions. When it comes to navigating the Microsoft new commerce experience, let OpenText walk you through the ins and outs of NCE. Respond to customer needs with ease, extract greater value from partner relationships, and achieve profitable growth. Your one-stop for procuring and deploying business security and productivity solutions is now available from OpenText. I'm going to give you a link to check out, bit.ly/NCE-OpenText. Find out what their experts can do to help you navigate the Microsoft new commerce experience, positioning yourself as an advisor for clients while improving your bottom line. That link again is bit.ly/NCE-OpenText. bit.ly/NCE-OpenText. Hello and welcome to Channel Pro Weekly, episode 210. My name is Matt Whitlock, technology editor, online director, and your host here. The leader of this expedition through the mountainous peaks and valleys of what we lovingly refer to as the IT channel. Along for the ride is you, the MSPs, the VARs, the IT integrators, consultants, system builders, networking gurus, security analysts, and many, many other titles that contain numerous acronyms. So if that sounds like you are in the right place. Joining me each and every week is the man of the hour, the guide, if you will, the Sherpa, since we're talking about mountainous journeys, your Sherpa to the IT channel, executive editor, Rich Freeman.
Hello, everybody.
So Rich, how many people can you carry on your back?
I can barely carry myself, so no, you're on your own, people. I'll point you in the right direction, but you're doing all the carrying.
So you're not hoisting people up the mountain on foot. You're just going to kind of point the way. I think that makes lots of sense. Rich, we have a guest this week. Because we have a lot to talk about. Oh my gosh, it's been a while since we've done a show, but we do have a guest this week. I can't think of anybody better to kick off 2022 with than our awesome guest today. He has been involved in the IT industry for well over 30 years. His background includes technical and management positions in startups, IT franchises, and Fortune 50 companies. His business experience is vast and is involved in numerous alliances and peer groups, received numerous awards. We're pleased, as always, to have with us Microsoft MVP, organizer of the SMB Tech Fest event series, and CIO of IT Innovators, Mr. Dave Seibert. Welcome, Dave.
Great to be here. Thanks, Matt.
It is a joy to have you. We got lots to talk about today, but Rich, I got to tell you, I'm a little nervous. I'm a little scared about this episode because it's been a long time. I don't even remember how to do this. I really don't. It's been like 4 weeks since we've done a show. So it's important to acknowledge, folks, that Channel Pro Weekly is back. We did take kind of an extended holiday hiatus here at the end of 2021 for a couple reasons. One, Mr. Freeman, our awesome Sherpa. Now I got to get you. Every time I look at you now, I'm picturing you in this big parka with this furry hood. I got to get you one of those. That would be really funny to have you on the show, or maybe I'll just superimpose one over you. But no, Mr. Freeman really needed to unplug and take some time off, which we're going to talk about. I also got a chance. I decided that I was also going to use the opportunity as well, since I don't get a lot of chance to take extended periods of time off. I took a couple of weeks myself to kind of decompress and do some stuff, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So Rich, you were off for quite a while. How'd it go? How was that?
It was great. It was phenomenal. It was exactly what I needed and wanted. Basically, I had the ability to do it. I think everybody truly out there, in the channel and beyond, I think everybody is just sort of feeling it. It's been an exciting 2 years in ways that many of us wish it hadn't been. And so between that and many years of what I do at ChannelPro and the traveling and so on like that, I was ready for more than a week or a week and a half off. And so, yeah, I took several weeks off and spent just a little bit of that at the beginning on the beach and most of it here in Seattle, and very restful and low key, and exactly what I was looking for.
So a little vacation was in there. That's good to hear. So what did you do at home for that long? Like, did you read books? Did you just nap all day? What does Rich Freeman do to decompress?
Well, you just actually touched on my two favorite things, because truly I did both of those pretty much every day. The other thing I did, and this it wasn't planned, but it was unexpectedly satisfying. Do you know how everybody has that list of things they're thinking about in the back of their mind? Someday, when I've got the time, I'm going to fill in the blank. I'm going to clean out the garage. Damn it, I need to clean out the garage. I need whatever it is. I got through a bunch of that stuff because I had the time all of a sudden, and it wasn't necessarily interesting to do, but when you check that stuff off the list, it feels really great.
Awesome stuff. I was in a similar boat, so I didn't have as much time off as you did, but I can't remember, Dave and Rich, the last time I had 2 weeks off in a row. Like that has not happened probably since I got married. So I mean, like years and years and years ago, or when my kids were born, I might have had a couple weeks in a row, but it was long time ago. So I also have this tendency that when I get time off, it's like, ooh, now I can do this and this and this. I got like this huge list of stuff to do, like around the house that I've been trying to get to. But then I have a tendency that when I take a week of vacation, I'm more tired than when I left. so I promised myself there was a couple things that I really wanted to get to. But I purposefully did not stack my vacation with just tons of projects and chores. Like I really budgeted in time to relax and to not do a lot, which was a great idea. So a couple of the important things, Rich, you remember what my office used to look like. It was like, what people don't know is like this camera is pointed this direction on purpose, because before, if I had moved the camera this direction and aimed it that way, it was like looking at the scene of a tornado that came through my office. That is actually clean now, Rich. I can be in my office and and it was like a stressor. Like being in here was stressful enough. And now it's like, it's clean. I can look and it's not stressful. My desk is clean. I got, Dave, like we talk about the museum stuff. We haven't done museum picks in a while because like I've ran out of interesting things that I own to talk about for the most part. But Rich, I got rid of probably over the last couple months, I've gotten rid of like 25 old computers and stuff like that. I mean, like just purging, trying to have less in my life, which has been great for stress. And it was great. Yeah. So great break, great holidays. Dave, how was your holidays? Did you have a good time off? Good New Year's? What'd you do?
Yeah, I did. And it was fun. I won't say I had time off. I live my life on what I call pockets of fun, puffs. And what that really translates, I don't really go 2 weeks anywhere. But my pockets of fun is I'll have a weekend getaway, or I'll go, movie night on a Thursday night, or I'll go to the wine bar with another couple, for 3 or 4 hours. And I have a whole bunch of those. So instead of, some people, that once a year they have that 1 week or that 2 weeks, I just literally have 50, 60 pockets of fun throughout the year. And that's my fun.
That's a great way to do it. I mean, that is the truest sort of work-life balance, right? Is you're always doing both.
It is good to have pockets of fun. Do you put anything in those pockets? Like how heavy is fun when you put it in?
The cool thing is dreaming up what you're going to do next. Like I said, the wine bar, right? So you hook up with another couple. You spend the evening, going through 2 or 3 bottles of wine, some great cheeses and meats, and having some fun, and head back home and hit the books again, as they call it. And then you think to yourself, I need another pocket of fun next week. What am I going to do? So
if life could only be a pocket of fun, right? So last question on this, and then and we'll kind of move on. But New Year's, what did y'all do to celebrate? Dave, let's start with you.
We, ours was kind of quiet. We had another couple come over, and we again put away about 2 bottles of wine and a whole bunch of cheese, and watch the ball drop, and that was our excitement. So no wild parties or anything like that, especially the stupid COVID stuff. But had a blast. It was kind of quiet, but really awesome.
Awesome, Rich. What did you do to ring in the new year?
Similar, but if anything, even just a little bit quieter. So I was connected virtually to some folks on Zoom, but I was basically just kind of here. Although here, I got to say, this is a good place to be on New Year's Eve in Seattle, because in the room behind me, for people who are watching on video, there's this big living room window that actually faces towards the Space Needle. And the Space Needle, they fire off fireworks and lights and stuff like that, so you can actually kind of see most of that from my living room here. So I was taking in that and hanging out online with some folks, and yeah, very low-key evening.
Fantastic. Ours was also low-key. We just had one family friends over with my son's friends' parents that we've kind of gotten to know over the last couple of years, and they're great people. So we had them over, and we played some games. We just kind of hung out, chatted, and watched the ball drop as well. Made it to midnight, and we made it to midnight Central Time, because I'm in Central. So the ball had already dropped. We rang in the local New Year's, and then everybody was tired and went home. So, but it was a good time. So that was what we did. Nice and simple. Good experience, good friends, and great time off. Unfortunately, we had to make the decision not to do a New Year special for ChannelPro Weekly, which we did last year, which was a lot of fun. I'd like to do another thing like that at some point, but I don't know. Maybe the new year is just it's a tough time to do that because everybody's kind of so busy and taking time off. So maybe we'll plan something else. But we got a great show ahead for 2022. Lots of ChannelPro Weekly goodness, lots of new interviews, lots of new content. It's gonna be great. Lots of great guests. Stick with us. Make sure you subscribe. Anywhere you can get podcasts, Google Play Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher. Subscribe on YouTube. Get involved with us, leave us comments, send us notes. We want you to be a part of the show. It's gonna be great. So Dave, you've been on many times. You're probably one of the hosts we've had on more than just about anybody else, because you're a lot of fun and you're very knowledgeable and you're always great to have on. But not everybody catches every show. So if they may not know who you are, tell us about you and what you do.
It's so funny. Only in this day and age can you be on a podcast and receive an instant message request in the middle of the process that you had to answer, and then I'm back again. Oh my gosh. So sorry for that. So just say the last 5 seconds.
Just not everybody catches every show. You've been on a lot. Tell us who you are, what you do.
So, hey, I totally appreciate, I got to tell you, I feel like an extension of the family. So it's great to be here on the new year and hang with you guys. You totally rock. And for those of you that don't know me, I guess it can be a little confusing because I wear more than one hat in the industry. And I have a MSP business for 25 years, IT Innovators. So it really gives me some great insight into the industry. Before IT Innovators, I had a life. So I'm we'll just say 35-year plus in the industry. I do run peer groups for 17 plus years of larger sized partners. And I have a quarterly conference event called SMB Tech Fest, which happens to be coming up pretty quick here. Q1 is January 20th, and it's going to be a virtual show, so people can attend from anywhere. And I got to give a fun plug. Microsoft has a new corporate VP that Gabriela Schuster, I guess the right term might be stepped down or is doing other roles now, but Rodney Clark. And I'm going to interview Rodney Clark as a keynote. So that's going to be really exciting. So hopefully in the show notes, you might squeeze in a URL. Anyone that wants to participate online, virtual, can go to smbtechfest.com/go/worldwide. And you can register and join us and have some fun.
Yeah, I'm sure we can find a way to work that URL into the show page. And that, you said, is January 20th virtual. So anywhere you are, you can attend. I absolutely recommend it. Definitely check out the show.
And of course, ChannelPro will be there.
ChannelPro will be there, of course. While we're plugging events, we've got an awesome event schedule coming up for 2022. We are doing, I believe, Rich, 6 regional events. We are scaling back the number of virtual events this year. We're doing 3 virtual events and 6 regional events for ChannelPro. Events.channelpronetwork.com is where you can check that out. Our first event of the year, Rich, is when?
That is March 9th. March 9th in Newark, New Jersey. You can get the exact location at events.channelpronetwork.com, but we're going to be in New Jersey on March 9th.
And then after that, Chicago. What are the other cities we're hitting to this year? Or
so Chicago in May, Dallas in June. And then the timing starts to get a little fuzzier in my head there at that point, but we're going to be back in Southern California again. We're doing a show sort of near Washington, D.C., sort of the Baltimore, Washington, D.C. area. And we will be in Charlotte, North Carolina, I believe, for the first time ever.
Yeah, that's in August. So you delayed long enough for me to actually pull up the schedule. So probably should have done that in advance. March, Newark, May 4th and 5th in Chicago, Dallas, Charlotte, Washington, D.C., and L.A. And plus, we've got 3 virtual-only events that we're doing. Our ChannelPro online summits, always really, really good stuff. Everybody usually raves about our online shows. Cybersecurity Online Summit, definitely one of our more popular ones, April 6th. Put that on your calendar. It is always a great, great event. We have our Business Management Online Summit in October and our Cybersecurity Online Summit in December. And of course, like we'll always be adaptive. If something happens, we're still in a worldwide pandemic. And if one of our regional shows is if we're unable to do a regional show, I do believe those will switch to a virtual format if required. So join us regionally if you can, and check out those online summits later on. So Dave, I'm going to take a couple minutes because I know that you were just at CES. And that's like the big consumer electronic. Well, it's used to stand for Consumer Electronics Show. Now it's just CES and stands for nothing. But that is generally the largest expo of technology of the year. How was it?
I'm first going to say it was exciting because it's CES. For me, it was year 22. Can you believe that?
I don't know how you can handle going to that show for 22 years, but kudos to you, man.
Just to have some fun, before that was Comdex, which I did 26 years before it stopped. But, CES was a totally different experience. It almost reminds me of if you went to CES right after 9/11, it was a bizarre experience. And there's no doubt this one, I think replaces it as the most bizarre CES. And, normally attendance is 250,000 people. I think this time it was probably, we'll just call it 40,000 to be kind. And of course, that's across all days. So imagine each individual day was, less. But, it was really tough. I know it's public news. It's been out there, some 60 major vendors pulled out. So it was quite common to be on a massive floor and to see a couple 80-foot by 80-foot pieces of concrete just empty. And so in that way, it was odd. But for the people who showed up and the vendors that showed up, it was a great show. And you still enjoyed all those elements of it.
And at least the bright side, though, is I bet the lunch line was a lot shorter than it had been in previous years.
I kid you not. This was the first CES that I could literally walk up and get almost any food item without a line.
Yeah, I used to remember like just the line for coffee when I would go would sometimes be 45 minutes. And it's like, you know what? I just don't need coffee today. No big deal. So awesome. So I don't want to drone on CES too long. I know a lot of coverage is still kind of coming out from it. There was still a lot of technology showed. I've seen lots of press releases, lots of news. Maybe give us like a top 5 favorite things Dave Seibert saw while at CES. Technology related, the girls at the booths and stuff. We don't have to talk about that.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna give you 2 fast answers. The one were the high-tech toys that none of us really have the wallet for, but damn, they were great to look at, like a $4 million Bugatti. Oh, come on, you had to enjoy it. There were some, they had a about a $1.5 million one person flying car. And that actually flies, not in the U.S., but in Dubai and other places. And $100,000 surveillance drone. Come on, where else can you see this stuff? Look at it, ask questions. So they had some fun, expensive toys. And then, a lot of people realize in our industry, it's not all the reason CES is now just CES, the letters, is because there's a lot of vendors that show up there that there's no other good trade show for them to go to. So I know QNAP was there, and I had a chance to talk to their product and engineering folks. IO Gear was there, and I had the same opportunity to do that. So to me, this is the chance to talk to the product people that you just can't get on the phone and ask them to deep dive into some of their solutions. And you'll see that at CES. So that's kind of what makes it worth my while. Not the latest, electronic toothbrush or the, latest electronic vacuum cleaner. That's not really why I go. I really go for the chance to see the business vendors that go to CES, because it's the only place left for them to really go.
Yeah. Did you get a chance to drive the Tesla Loop underground thing?
I did. And let me tell you, this was really exciting. I mean, come on, this is fun stuff, and anyone can do it. We all don't get to drive the $4 million Bugatti, right? But the loop, so it's a 2-mile loop underneath the convention center. And literally I landed at 8 in the morning before the show opened, and hence the loop was running. So I jumped in the loop, and it's underground. So about 40 feet underground, no wait. They had about 70 Teslas running, and you literally no line jump in it. They go, where do you want to go? You say South Hall, and they shoot into this tunnel. And a driver takes you to South Hall, no stop signs, no pedestrians, just shoot through the tunnel. You get to the other end, and they open the door for you, they close the door. It's like valet service. And it was really cool. And then what did I do when I exited and went up the escalator? I peeked around and I went right back down and did it again. And I came back the opposite direction. So it was pretty exciting.
Well, awesome. Well, sounds like a good experience. Sound like you saw some cool things. So that's great. Thanks for the CES update. Very, very neat stuff. And we got a lot of show ahead for you folks. We've got some news we're going to be talking about. The new Ingram CEO we're going to be talking about, as well as Sophos has some new things to talk about. IGI Cyber Labs is in the news. We're going to talk about a story called Social Work. It's going to be a little bit about social media and how to leverage that for business results. Plus an amazing interview coming up with Justin Gilbert. He's the Senior Director of Channel Marketing at Zix. We're going to be talking with him and lots more. I mean, it's a jam-packed show, folks. It's been 4 weeks, so we've got a lot to get through. In the meantime, Rich, why don't you tell us every possible news story that we missed over the last 4 weeks? Go. No, I'm kidding. That would take forever. But we can go ahead and jump into the news. Let's talk about Ingram Micro, and they've got a new CEO. What's that about?
What's funny about this, actually, Matt, is it has been weeks since we've talked about the news, and all 3 news stories we're going to talk about here broke within like the last 36 hours. So it's still actually kind of new. And beginning with Ingram Micro now having a new CEO, and his name is Paul Bay. This will come as zero surprise to anyone who is in the Ingram ecosystem. Paul Bay was running the Americas business for Ingram for a long time. At the very beginning of 2020, they added the global technology solutions part of the company to his responsibilities. They've basically been kind of grooming him for this role for some time, and they announced yesterday that he is now the CEO of the company. So Alain Monnier, who was the chairman and CEO, is going to his new official title is executive chairman. He is not retiring or going away, but he's going to be the chairman of the company. Paul Bay is going to be the CEO. In connection with that, Kirk Robinson, who was running the U.S. business for Ingram Micro, is stepping up a little bit. He's now running North America, so he's responsible for the U.S. and Canada. And somebody else was promoted to take on Latin America. Basically, they took the Americas responsibility that Paul Bay was directly responsible for. They split it up into Latin America and North America. And Kirk Robinson, who I know is very familiar to a lot of folks in the audience right now, is now his title is, I think, Executive Vice President and President of Ingram Micro North America. And then one other thing that this is a name that might be less familiar to folks outside the media, at least, is that a gentleman named Nimesh Dave, who has been running the global cloud business for Ingram for a number of years, announced that he's going to be moving on, looking for other opportunities. We don't know what he has in mind, if there's something specific there, but he's not going to be running the cloud business anymore going forward, and the cloud business becomes part of what Paul Bay is overseeing. I had a chance to speak to Paul, I mean, literally right before we started recording this podcast. There's like a few minutes before I hung up with him and before we started recording. So I haven't written anything about this just yet, but a lot of what he had to say is I think what you would anticipate. I mean, he emphasized that there's going to be a lot of consistency strategically with where Ingram is going, and that was specifically in the context of what this means for partners. It's not going to be some giant earthquake out there. There's been a strategy in place, particularly since Platinum Equity, the equity investor that now owns Ingram Micro, made that investment. That strategy remains in place, and it'll now be Paul's responsibility to continue driving that forward. And just in case anyone is curious, I asked, because you got to ask in a conversation like this, when do the supply chain issues end? Because if anyone's going to know that, it's the new CEO of Ingram Micro. And he said, I don't have a crystal ball either, Rich, but it's coming up this year at some point. And, he emphasized that in his view, Ingram partners don't need to be too worried about that, because he says the company has done a good job of sort of managing around that and making sure that they have a reasonable amount of inventory in place. So he's going to spend the next few months, he said, doing a lot of listening, especially in the parts of the business like cloud he hasn't run before. And then he's going to dive right in and take on his new CEO responsibilities.
Dave, any thoughts?
First of all, some really familiar names. I mean, especially Kirk Robinson, that's been around the channel for quite some time. So it's interesting. I don't know that it impacts partners very much, but interesting to watch them, grow their careers and watch the people that you've known for decades shift and move up the ladder. On a fun note, Ingram is in Irvine, California, headquarter wise, and I happen to be in Irvine, California. So ironically, quite often I drive by and see the building off the freeway. So close to home in that regard.
Dave, you make an interesting point. It didn't really occur to me until right now, as you were talking about Kirk Robinson. When I met him, he was running the US SMB business for Ingram. And then they promoted him. He was running US. Now he's running North America. It's actually kind of a nice thing to have somebody with deep roots in SMB as opposed to enterprise, say, in that position in charge of North America. I mean, this is somebody, the new head of Ingram North America really understands the SMB market. That might be a good thing.
Absolutely. And I think it will have an impact on the programs that they come out with. And it will be, I won't say partner first, but it's definitely going to include SMB, while it may not be the dollar leader that enterprise is, but by sheer quantity, there's more SMB out there by sheer volume. So it's a good thing overall.
Fantastic. Rich, I don't really have any comments, but I do have one question for you. How long did you practice pronouncing his name before you got on the show?
Paul Bay?
Moving on. Moving on. No, the other one.
There was no practice, although I will confess, every time I say that name, I tense up just a little bit because I know. And during the interview, it's like, is it Alan, Elaine? You know, yeah. So there is a little of that.
Fantastic. Oh, you totally got me on that one. That was awesome. Hilarious. All right, moving on. We've got Sophos in the news. They also have executives with really complicated names to pronounce, like Bill. But they've got some switches to add to their network appliance portfolio. They look like nice switches. Tell us about those.
Well, you know what's significant about this, Matt? These are not just switches that they introduced officially yesterday. These are the first switches they have ever made. So Sophos has had firewalls for a long time. They have wireless access points. They have these remote Ethernet devices. They've been in the hardware business for a long time. They are now in the network switch business as well. From their perspective, as you would expect, what is exciting about this for partners is that this makes it that much easier for them to have an end-to-end Sophos kind of approach to networking and network security. So you're not dealing with some of the complexity and potentially the gaps around a multi-vendor kind of strategy. So this is exciting for Sophos, but also does make life easier for people who have invested heavily in the Sophos portfolio. This is definitely an SMB. This is my characterization of it, but I think it's definitely an SMB first kind of product line, at least for now. The use cases that they highlight are in remote offices, remote work sites, which is obviously a huge scenario today. Retail outlets, branch offices. So they're kind of looking at those smaller sites for these devices right now. They've got two families of products here, the 100 series and the 200 series. In the 100 series, they've got 7 devices out there right now, a combination of wall mount and rack mount, 8 ports, 24 or 48, 1 gigabit, and I believe there are some models in there that have the higher gigabit rating in there as well, but I'm not positive about that. Ultimately, there will be 3 200 series devices, which are a little bit beefier and more robust. Only one of those is available right now. It has 8 ports, but there are some bigger devices with more ports coming towards the middle of the year. From a management perspective, right now, you can manage these devices completely, as it were, through a local web interface, a command line interface, or SNMP, if that's the way you like to do this kind of thing. You can also do some configuration of the devices through Sophos Central, which is the sort of centralized management plane for everything that Sophos sells. Eventually, you'll be able to do more or less anything through Sophos Central, but they're going to be kind of gradually adding functionality there over time. So right now, there might be some things that you find you need to do through the web interface, for example. I left out the zero-touch deployment, which Sophos emphasizes, and that's obviously very important these days, especially in a remote office kind of setting. So you just kind of key in a serial number, and the rest of it's going to happen behind the scenes. And then the only other thing to mention, and this is kind of relevant to the Sophos Central issue I was talking about before, they didn't get into pricing, so I can't tell you how much these units cost, but all of them come with the local web, the command line interface, and the SNMP management. If you want to do the Sophos Central management, you're going to have to buy an optional add-on support subscription, which also gets you RMA assistance, 24/7 phone support, firmware updates, et cetera. And I don't know how much extra that costs either, but a whole new hardware family, basically, for Sophos.
Absolutely. And Dave, are you excited to see a new family of network switches?
You know, actually, it's exciting because Sophos has a great family product lineup. They really do. So to add the switches underneath the same umbrella, the same brand is pretty exciting. The thing that I'll add on top of what Rich said that kind of perks my interest is the 2.5 gigabit ports.
Yep.
And that's not that's been around actually for quite a few years, but you don't see it too much deployed. It's normally been reserved for gaming machines. And you normally see 1 gig or 10 gig. And so it's kind of nice to watch them, since this is a new line, come out with the 2.5. I think that might become more and more of a standard, which, in today's age with cloud computing and everything, NAS devices that we all connect to, that's kind of exciting to see the 2.5 on it. I think that's probably, just to add a little bit of icing onto what Rich already laid out.
Yeah, Rich, if I may, I can foreshadow a little bit of what's something that might be coming up in the February issue, if I may.
Please.
So I totally agree with you, Dave. I think it's really cool to see 2.5 base T products start to be a little bit more prevalent, because that standard hit, I was like 6 years ago, and it kind of you have to I guess understand that the demand for wired networking certainly hasn't been huge, as like wireless is certainly much more prevalent, and that's where a lot of the focus is. But we're starting to get ISPs offering connections to the internet faster than 1 gigabit, right? So if you're locked into 1 gig, you can't use that. We're starting to see Wi-Fi 6 access points. This is a business related case that are starting to have throughput greater than that. So like we almost kind of need to finally move that threshold up. But I think one of the big things holding 2.5 base T back, especially at the very small, at least the small home office side, is that there just hasn't been any affordable switches that utilize it, right? And so without that, you're looking at business class products, and there just isn't necessarily the demand for it. I think there will be now for some of the reasons that I said. But if I could foreshadow the February issue that you'll be getting in the next, when does that hit, Rich? Mid-February?
February 10th. 10-ish.
10-ish. Yeah. So I finally got a chance to get my hands on a new product from Zyxel. It is a 8-port. They have a 5 and an 8-port 2.5 base T based switch that is kind of designed for home small office use. That comes in at a very low MSRP. So maybe not quite as cheap as a gigabit switch, but 169 is by far the cheapest switch I've ever seen for an 8-port.
That's really good.
Yeah, that uses 2.5 base T, and we're starting to see it. So Realtek has some chips now that are kind of building 2.5 base T in, so OEMs can add it to their network controllers for a very low cost. So I think we're finally going to start seeing that stuff. So keep an eye out for the February issue. We're going to be talking a little bit about that switch and 2.5 base T in general. So that's exciting stuff. I do see that that the 200 series here also has a power over Ethernet budget. So if you are doing something like a big Wi-Fi 6 deployment, you can power your access points off this, which is a really nice feature, or surveillance cameras, that kind of thing. So that's pretty cool as well. So and they're white. So if you have dark gray switches, now you can have white switches, right? And then the Zyxel one's silver. It's always good to have multicolor switches. A nice diverse variety of colors in networking gear is important. Does anybody make black switches? Like a smoke
WatchGuard makes them in fire engine red.
Yeah, red, fire engine red.
I think some of HP switches are black switches.
I think so. I think they have like an onyx kind of color. And doesn't there a company that makes orange ones?
Yes. Actually, isn't it? Oh no, I was going to say it's not Zyxel. Who am I thinking of? I know exactly what you're talking about, and now I'm blanking on the name. It'll come to me later.
It'll come to me, or if you know who it is, folks, put it in the comments or send us an email, podcast@channelpronetwork.com. Let's see if we can figure out how many different colors of switches exist. So that way, when you're kind of customizing a rack or putting together some stuff for data center, you can color coordinate like nobody's business.
Hey, let me tell you, the color is important on access points, because when those things are 30 foot up in the ceiling and you don't know what they are, it's great to color code and you rapidly know, right?
Absolutely. And yeah, totally true. Well, these look like great switches. We're going to link to this story, and folks, all the stories that we're talking about, we put links to them on the show notes page for episode 210, channelpronetwork.com. Find it. All the links there, and then you'll get a lot more detail, because there's like tons and tons of details and stuff in here. If you're watching on YouTube, hi guys, nice to see you. Make sure you subscribe, like the channel, and put a comment down there, just something. Any kind of comment is good. Well, I mean, a good comment is better than a bad comment, I guess. So good comments only, please. But drop those below and engage with us. We would love that. But also, folks, for you, open the description area. We put all the links to these stories in there so you can follow along as we go through. Rich, the only thing I didn't see in here was pricing. Did they kind of give a rough price range of their new switches?
No, that actually was in the story. That they the official announcement about this did not include pricing.
Okay, so they cost more than 0 and less than $1 million. So somewhere in that range. I guess you'll just have to go and find out, or don't just buy them, and they don't even want you to look at the price. Maybe that tells you that they're might be kind of expensive. Who knows? But I guess we will find out. So go check those out. Anything else on switches before we move on?
I think we're ready to go.
We're ready to roll. IGI Cyber Labs has equipped Nodeware. This is a long title, Rich. Why don't you just tell us about it?
Yeah, so IGI Cyber Labs is this company that actually came into being around June or so last year. It was a spinoff from IGI, and it's 100% focused on a product and a name that might be a little bit more familiar to folks in the audience right now, Nodeware, which is a vulnerability management system. Lightweight agent, no host hardware, physical, virtual, whatever, no host. You put the agent to work, it goes across the network, finds anything connected to it, looks around for vulnerabilities, pulls the information together for you on a dashboard and in reports. And now, starting this week, one of the things it can do is look at all those assets that it is monitoring and scan them for Log4j vulnerabilities. So we've been talking about news stories that broke within the last 36 hours. One of the biggest, if not the biggest, stories that broke while we were on our hiatus was the whole Log4j security crisis, or whatever you want to call it. Log4j is this extremely popular, very well, widely used logging library from Apache. There was a vulnerability, actually a family of vulnerabilities called Log4Shell, discovered in December, that in the right hands allows people to essentially take over computers via Log4j. Huge exposure. And there are patches out there, but the experts who I've read basically are predicting we're going to be hearing about exploits and attacks that take advantage of this vulnerability months, probably years down the road, given how thoroughly embedded Log4j is out there. And so now Nodeware partners locate devices that might be exposed to Log4Shell. One thing that's interesting about the way they implement it is they will not just sort of flag the assets, the network attached devices that are potentially vulnerable. They'll actually call attention to the specific Java applications that you need to be aware of and patch on those devices. And it's worth noting, because the IGI Cyber Labs folks did that just last week. The FTC issued a warning to folks that said, and I am quoting, that the FTC, quote, intends to use its full legal authority to pursue companies that fail to take reasonable steps to protect consumer data from exposure as a result of Log4j or similar known vulnerabilities in the future. So this, I'm sure everybody listening, watching right now was motivated to get on top of this last month. But if there's anyone out there who's been kind of sleeping on this a little bit, the federal government just wants you to know that sooner or later they may get around to noticing that you haven't done something about that, and there could be some serious liability there. Honestly, though, Matt, it's news from this week. I wanted to bring it up, but I also kind of wanted to just take advantage of having Dave on the show. And from the frontline perspective of a ChannelPro, Dave, how has this whole Log4j thing impacted you?
Yeah, the first thing I'll say is this is one not to be underestimated. We hear all the time about a security flaw, vulnerability. I mean, let's face it, it's like, it's another day, another flavor. But this one is way more vast. I mean, this affects millions of devices. It's open source. Because it's open source, it's inside of so many embedded IoT devices. And a lot of those IoT devices are hanging off the networks that we manage or take care of. And a lot of those IoT devices have no good means of updating them. So you're going to, either need to update them or take them offline, but you can't do that unless you, identify what they are. So, so I guess my first one is that if you thought this one was just, it's another announcement, no, you really need to dive in. Matter of fact, the U.S. security director did a small press where she basically said, Jen Easterly is her name. She basically said this is one of the worst vulnerabilities she has seen in over a decade. And the reason why is because it is so vast, meaning the open source aspect of it. It's in so many devices that, either intentionally, unintentionally. So it's really widespread. And unfortunately, it allows bad actors to take control and get in with very little security to it. So, the other thing I'll add real quick too is GitHub. If you Google it, GitHub fired up a site that's really good that vendors are registering their products. And there's thousands and thousands of vendors added at this point. Now they've actually added an A to Z directory that didn't exist a few days ago. And you can look at the vendor that you use. Ubiquity is affected. A lot of access points are affected. A lot of SANs, NASs are affected. So peek at that GitHub article. It's really good.
And what are companies doing? Are companies that have devices that are updatable? Are they providing patches for this?
Yeah.
Like,
matter of fact, know that some companies had to issue 2 patches. So they learned more after the initial patch. So like if you go to the GitHub site, it'll actually tell you the vendor and their product, and it'll tell you that it's not at risk, meaning they don't have that code in their device. Also, they'll tell you, hey, here's the patch. And then quite a few of them have, hey, here's the second patch. So if you think you're patched, don't think you're patched, go back and look again, because a lot of them had to do a second patch.
wow, and that's got to be an enormous number of devices. It really does.
Yeah, and a totally shameless plug, I admit it up front. On the SMB Tech Fest conference coming up on the 20th, we actually have 2 security experts that are going to cover this topic in a deep dive. And it's Matt Lee and Wes Spencer. If you know those guys, they're really great in the channel. But we actually have a topic just on this. So don't dismiss it. This is actually pretty serious. And it's a bad vulnerability that your clients can potentially have.
Yeah, an important point to I think to make too, Dave, is that a lot of people sometimes conflate open source with secure, and that those 2 things don't always go together. So
they almost never go together.
But open source has a lot of eyeballs looking at it, generally speaking. Sometimes
no, I give you that. I mean, open
secure,
source, you're right. It tends to be better because the community is making it better. But all I'm sharing is, by de facto, because it's open source doesn't mean by any means it's secure.
Right, or will be secure forever or exploited. So it's always important to never think that you're safe. Always be diligent and always be watching this stuff. So anything else, Rich, we want to talk about Log4j? I know there's a lot, but there's a lot here. Main takeaway, folks, go and start scanning and start finding where your customers are vulnerable, because that's your job.
And hey, Rich, I'll share a link to GitHub that perhaps you guys can put into the show notes that will allow people rapidly to take a look at those vendors and see if products at their client sites are in that list.
Thank you. Please do send that along. We will put that in the show notes.
Fantastic. And with that, that wraps up the news for this week. So, but we've got one other story that we want to talk about, and it's called Social Work, Maximizing Social Media for Business Results. Rich, I mean, we could talk about social media strategy and business results on social media all day long. It's like the magic sauce everyone wants to figure out. What do we have to offer our wonderful listeners and readers on this particular topic?
So the story that you alluded to right there runs in our December issue. It appeared on our website as well during our hiatus. When I kind of put it on the editorial calendar, I directed the woman who wrote the story to one Dave Seibert, because he, as much as, if not more than, more or less anyone I know, really is very good at utilizing social media, has a lot of experience in that. And so he was one of the sources for the story. You'll see him quoted there. And so mainly what, again, what I kind of want to do is just take advantage of having access to Dave to talk about this a little bit. And I'll just set you up with a few things, Dave, looking at the article just to kind of get your thoughts. One of the points that the author of this piece made is that there can be a lot of ROI out of social media, but there is a time investment that has to be made. And so, I mean, can you give people a sense for, can you quantify that at all? I mean, how, if somebody here is thinking, man, I really do need to get better at social media marketing, how much time should they sort of figure this is going to take them?
The first thing I'd say, it's like eating an elephant one bite at a time, right? And the first thing is that I've learned watching social media. I can do a post and it quite honestly can be 3 weeks later and somebody I know will comment, hey, I like that. Meaning they may not be on that social platform sometimes for 2 or 3 weeks, and then they log in. And likewise, there's people that live their life on it. I mean, I feel like their life is an open book and they're always posting. So there's extremes, if you will. But my answer to you is, whatever you do, be consistent. I'll share with you 2 little insights, little tidbits. I'm flattered. I actually made it to the top 1% of the LinkedIn system. So I made it to 1% of that LinkedIn kind of does 3 things: your own little private network, your industry, and then LinkedIn as a whole. And I made it to the 1% of our industry and the 1% of LinkedIn as a whole. And I did that by spending roughly 20 minutes every other day. So what is that? 3 days a week, 20 minutes. And 20 minutes is my total time in, meaning reading, commenting, posting. So the key is I'm consistent. I kind of block that time off. But you can achieve some really good results, by spending that amount of time, or any time that you choose. Just be consistent. But even if you went on it once a week, you're still, ahead of 70% of the LinkedIn platform audience. So you're ahead of the game just by logging in once a week. You post twice a week, you're ahead of the game among most. So take advantage, get your brand out there, get your message out there. You can't beat the price tag, and you can't beat the exposure.
So just to give people a sense, I've heard this number before. It slips my mind now, but just to give people a sense for, what's maybe typical of somebody in that 1%. How many LinkedIn connections do you have?
I don't have that many. I'm pretty selective, and so I think I'm roughly about 6,500 right now. And realize that in LinkedIn, they consider you a super connector if you have more than 3,000 connections. So think about that for a minute, meaning, they don't, a super connector, there's not that many of them. And if you look at a graph of how many, I think the average person has about 300 connections. It's LinkedIn average. So it's not that difficult if you go after folks to reach 3,000. If you hit 3,000, you're in the top percentile of the whole system. So it's not outlandish, and it's not about how many can you get. I mean, if I wanted to, people send me invites all the time. I get hairdressers, I get real estate people, I get, you get everything. And it's not about how many can you get. It's about, the people that are impactful to what you want to achieve and who you want to communicate to. And that's really what it's all about. So anyway, I think I probably got that 1% when, I don't know, when I had, less than 4,000. So it really doesn't take that much to reach it. Just be consistent.
You mentioned before this is a great way to get your brand out there, but you don't necessarily want to use these platforms to just advertise your brand. So what kind of content do you post? What kind of activities do you engage in? What does it mean to be doing social media marketing?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Go Giver book, if you know that. And I really do believe that if you help people, if you educate people, it's a bit of that go giver / karma. It's going to come back to you. There's an old adage, and it's true, and that is, first people need to like you, then your company, and then your product. And like you get the idea. There's a relationship with you first, and otherwise you're never really going to make it to the product. So the key is post information that helps others, post information that's educational, post things that helps other people learn. They will remember who shared that knowledge with them, or where that knowledge stakeholder is when they need it. And when they need it, so when I say, let your brand be heard, I'm really sharing, educate, and people know, they know who you are. Matt, they know who you are. Rich, they know who you are. And when you share information, they remember where that information came from. And when they have a need for it, they know exactly how to reach out. I'll tell you a very quick, it's amazing how the world's changed. Old school, I say old school, if somebody wanted to reach you, they would hunt down your email address and send you an email. It's amazing how many times that my screen pops up that somebody's sending me a instant message on either Facebook or LinkedIn. Business, hey, I wanted to talk to you about ABC. And they're not necessarily, most people don't know my cell number. They probably don't know yours either. Most people know our email addresses, and a lot of people know how to reach us on social media. So it's amazing how much business is transacting just because people, social media says, hey, this person's online, and people reach out and connect with you and don't know any other means to reach you, and it makes business happen. So educate them is the answer.
So something, and there was a bit of a division of opinion about this in the article, but it was a topic that was addressed, so we're talking about what you should post, but what you shouldn't maybe post comes up in the story as well. And you're quoted in here basically saying, you know what, maybe steer clear of politics. That it can be part of your life, maybe a way you use social media in your private life, but from a business standpoint, controversy, probably, stirring things up that way probably isn't a good idea. There's another person quoted in the story actually who kind of says that authenticity is kind of important, and being yourself, letting people know who you are as a human being actually is a good thing. What are your thoughts about that? About what we're talking about what you should say, but what are the things maybe that you really just shouldn't get into?
Every place has a role and a time, and so I would ask a different question. Obviously I read the article too, but I would ask a different question. What's your desired outcome? If your desired outcome is to get a whole bunch of people to say, yeah, that sucks, yeah, let's get rid of him, yeah, let's, whatever. If that's your desired outcome, sure, go after the political side, go after the controversy of the day, because it does get more chitter chatter, meaning it gets more activity. I mean, I always get a little ticked off in a funny sense. I could have something really exciting in the business world happen and post it, and a couple people will like it. Okay, fine. But if somebody posts up their dog laying upside down, with its tail and its, paws out, that thing can get 10,000 likes and go viral in no time. So there's no doubt that people, there's certain kinds of posts that get way more activity. But what is your goal? What's your outcome desired? And if I post something political and a whole bunch of people agree or disagree and get into a heated debate, does that really help my end of day business cause? Now, if I'm in the political arena, maybe it does. Great, post. But I'm in, I'm in technology. I'm in conference events and peer groups and my technology company. Those don't help me land clients. So ask yourself, that core question. What's your desired outcome? And that will help you decide if posting that kind of content's beneficial to you.
I think it might also be good to point out too that there is there's not always a lot of separation on social media where you can say, on LinkedIn, I'll never post anything political, but on Twitter, that's where I'm going to go to town. If you're posting as your audience is probably following you in multiple locations. So you can't always, you really do have to have your own personal strategy of what you are, like you're saying, Dave, trying to achieve and not shoot yourself in the foot in the process.
Yeah, totally. And I get it. I read the post just like everybody else. There's some people that, they love controversy. I boarded the plane and the stewardess treated me horrible and I'm never going to fly them again. Okay, it's great conversation, but does that help advance your business cause? That's the question I ask.
Yeah, very, very good advice. And Rich, there's some other awesome names and folks that we had contributed to this article. What, who, and what kind of other advice do you think people might go find if they go and check it out?
Well, they'll hear some thoughts from Mike Bloomfield, who's co-hosted with us, Rick Jordan, the CEO of a quite large MSP in your backyard, Matt, in the Chicago area. We will have a note to this, or excuse me, a link to the story available in the show notes. And yeah, believe me, we've touched on a number of the topics covered in the story, but there's actually more in there. So check it out.
Awesome. Hey, I'll add one more thing real fast, kind of a tidbit that I offered, and I think it's probably the best secret sauce. And that is most people do what I call 80% of the work, but they get 20% of the reward. And that is that when they create content and simply post and stop there. And my fast tip to you is that you want to tag and use hashtags. Don't abuse them, but leverage them to match what you just wrote about. And by doing that, you're going to bump yourself into that 80% tile of reaching and impacting a lot of people you care about and know about. A lot of people, they never tag, they never make references to people that of what they wrote, or they don't use hashtags so that all the various Twitter and feeds pick it up. So do those two things, because you already did 80% of the work. Why not just put in another 10% and get much more benefit back?
Also great advice. You also mentioned sauces and eating elephants. So what is the ultimate sauce to eat with elephant?
Nice. Barbecue.
Elephant and bar. All right. So Dave, I'm going to save that question for later. Never mind. We're gonna save that question for when we come back after our interview, which we do have a great interview coming up. Coincidence that we kind of need to talk about is we've got an interview coming up with Justin Gilbert. He's a senior director of channel marketing at Zix and also a part of AppRiver, who happens to be sponsoring this particular show, as you heard at the top of the show there, talking about things like the Microsoft new customer experience. Rich, do you want to tell this story, like what happened?
Yeah, actually. So I came across, so I was trying to wrap my brain around the new consumer or new commerce experience, excuse me, some months ago. I first started hearing about it around August or so. In fact, I remember exactly where I got the very first sort of whiff that something big was happening. On this show, Matt, we had Zach Kramer on as our guest host, and he made this sort of offhanded reference to it in passing, as if we knew what he was talking about. And I was thinking to myself, what is he? And so I started looking into it and was having some trouble kind of understanding exactly what it was. I came across a blog post from Zix that was actually really kind of helpful. And I thought we ought to have somebody from that organization on the show. It took like weeks to get the timing right. We lined it up somewhere between Thanksgiving and very early in December. And then you and I discovered, what, 3-4 hours ago, that the exact same company is sponsoring this episode, and they're very excited to talk to their customers about the new commerce experience. So might look a little funny, but that's honestly how it kind of came together, folks.
It is the truth. And for those who have been listening and watching for a long time know that Rich has like this uncanny luck when like scheduling guests that happen to just perfectly line up with stories that we didn't know existed that were going to exist at the time that we scheduled the guests. And they're like, oh yeah, there's a story on this company, but I happen to be on the advisory board for that company. And it's like, Rich is like the luckiest guy in the world. So amazing coincidence. But we do, again, thank OpenText for sponsoring the show today. And absolutely thank Justin for coming on. So we're going to switch gears to that. It's going to be a great interview, and we will we'll do that in a second. So stick around. We'll be right back. And we are back with part 2 of ChannelPro Weekly. You know, Microsoft's new commerce experience for license-based services officially went into effect January 10th. They say the new commerce experience offers partners more flexibility and capabilities when purchasing and managing products like Microsoft 365, Dynamics 365, Windows Intune, and so on. Although some of what I've heard from partners isn't exactly positive. Fortunately, we have an excellent guest with us this week to help us take a closer look at NCE and what it means for you. Please welcome the Senior Director of Channel Marketing at Zix, Justin Gilbert. Welcome, Justin.
Hey, thanks. Appreciate it.
Great to have you on the show with us. Been looking forward to it. And of course, I want to point out, we also still have the amazing and awesome Dave Seibert here, also very, very plugged into NCE, joining us for this interview, still with us. Dave, good to have you back on the other side.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot to talk about with NCE. And like I mentioned kind of in my intro when setting up, I'm hearing some good, I'm hearing some not so good. So I know we're going to touch on that. But first, Justin, I want to give you a chance to kind of tell us a little bit about you and what you do at Zix.
Wow. So I'm a bit like the Swiss Army knife of the channel. You know, I do a bit of channel marketing, but my role has been transitioning. So now I actually I do, you know, I've helped build our partner programs here at Zix App River. You know, I ran the channel for a good long while, and then you know, now more recently I've been doing a lot of events, getting out talking to partners about the new commerce experience. And helping partners, you know, understand what these changes mean for their business, and really, you know, what do they need to do to prepare? Yeah,
for sure. And how long have you been at Zix, and what kind of led you?
No, that's a rude question. You're never supposed to ask someone how long they've been somewhere. I'm joking. So, you know, I joined back in 2007. I left for a couple years and then came back. Because, you know, I'm a glutton for punishment. You know, I came back because honestly, this is kind of where my home is, and I love the community. But yeah, so since 2007, really long time.
That is, yeah. It's not often you find somebody with stints of employment that long these days. So that's pretty,
especially in sales, right? Sales and marketing.
Especially in sales, yeah, for sure. So I got to ask you a question, because Star Wars comes up on the show a lot, and I see something in your background. So folks who are listening, Justin has like this R2. I'm gonna spotlight you here. So it's like a droid, right? And when I see like droids like this, you know, kind of like the R2D2 like style of droid, I normally see like R2D2, or I see like BB-8, right? Yeah. And you've got like the version of the droid that was like the one that like exploded and was a hunk of junk. What is the story behind that?
Yeah. So, well, you know, even back when we could all travel without masks and all of that stuff, I got the chance to go down to Disney World. And if you've never been to Disney World, to their new Star Wars experience, holy cow, like it's everything that every nerdy kid like myself always wanted and never had the chance. So my son and I got to build these lightsabers here. So there's these lightsabers, and they have the whole lore of the lightsabers. And then we got to go in and build droids. And so, of course, my son built the R2 unit, the R2D2 unit. And then I built this, the one that this is like the red shirt for Star Trek. This guy blows up the moment he comes on board, right? So like the moment he shows up, you're like, well, that guy's in trouble. So I built that one.
That is really, really cool.
I just have to add, for anyone who doesn't know the red shirt, you always knew in every Star Trek episode, if they had a red shirt, they would never make it to the end of the show.
Oh, it was so bad. It was so bad.
Yeah, a long time joke too. So like on this away mission, there's going to be Captain Kirk, Spock, McCoy, and Billy. I was like, Billy's
Like,
not coming
oh,
back.
Poor guy. Poor guy.
Poor Ensign Billy. He wasn't long for this world, and he should have known it the second they announced that list of a landing target. So rather than dive into the intricacies of Star Trek and Star Wars, which literally could be a show in and of itself, let's talk about the new customer, or I always want to say the new customer experience, the new commerce experience. Dave, Justin, do you want to kind of like set us up and tell us what it is, what we need to know, kind of?
I'll totally yield to Justin. It's his time.
Well, I can tell you a little bit about the why to start with. So we've been working with AppRiver with Microsoft as part of their pilot program since April of last year around the new commerce experience. The new commerce experience is Microsoft's global alignment and moving 17 different go-to-market motions into 3. That's enterprise, web direct or direct, and the CSP program. And so it's aligning subscription models, it's aligning purchasing and all of these different things, so partners have an even playing field against these other go-to-market motions. And so in some cases, as you mentioned early on, some partners are going to feel like this isn't ideal right now because these alignments feel a bit jankety to some of those partners, right? I think that when we look back in 2 to 3 years, it's just going to be the new normal. In my experience, I was there when Microsoft, AppRiver was actually, on stage when Microsoft launched Office 365 in 2011. When this first launched, it was kind of like, partners weren't really sure, if they wanted to be part of it. But it felt kind of odd to partners, and so a lot of partners didn't want to buy into it. And I feel this is kind of the same way. In 2 to 3 years, we're going to look back, and this is just going to be the new normal. This is just going to be the new way, and it's going to be better for partners in the long term. But we just have to get to this year of transition.
So, how you mentioned one of those 3 sort of remaining GTMs is the members of the Cloud Solution Provider program. How is this specifically going to impact them? Yeah,
so when it comes to like day to day, like what's going to change in their program from where it was prior to January 10th, the big stuff is going to be that their Microsoft is rolling out new annual and new multi-year agreements. Now they've always had month to month, and they've always had annual, but the annual terms they had before didn't really have any reason for partners to choose that as an option over month to month. And since most CSPs, which are MSPs, and since most MSPs operate on a month-to-month basis, there was never really any reason to choose that. The new annual terms, give partners a discount over what is going to be now a higher per month price. The new month-to-month terms are 20% higher pricing than the current terms. And that, that right there sounds like a shock. Like, oh man, that's a lot. It's 20% uplift. But remember, in 2 years from now, when you go to quote a customer, that customer is they're not going to know that it was 20% less 2 to 3 years ago. That's just going to be the new price. So it's going to be 20% higher if you want to choose month to month. If you choose annual, you'll have a 20% price decrease, and that's similar to how it's operated on Web Direct for the past few years anyway. So that's an alignment across that. And there's some other changes that are happening. There's going to be a change to how trials are started and maintained. When you start up a trial, you have something like, I believe it's 72 hours going forward to be able to, cancel a subscription that you had initially started. So that's kind of a change. Historically, you've had, initially when Microsoft rolled out 365, it was 30 days. Then it was reduced, and it was reduced again. So now this is just a further reduction of that trial period. So you have 72 hours if you order something to cancel a subscription. So annual, is one change. Multi-year is another change, and that multi-year is important because it does give partners something they don't have today, which is revenue predictability. You can sign a customer up for multiple years and take advantage of locking that customer into a long-term contract with you. And the other thing that this provides partners, which Microsoft doesn't list it as one of their benefits, but it gives partners protections they haven't had before. Microsoft when they went from their indirect program, from their previous program prior to CSP, customers couldn't move from partner to partner. They just couldn't. If they wanted to move from partner to partner, they had to do a full data migration. With the introduction of CSP, customers have been able to move from CSP provider to CSP provider with just a simple data, a backend administrative change. With this going forward, because most customers will going forward likely be locked into annual contracts, they won't be able to move. They won't be able to move from one provider to another without quite a bit of work and without waiting until the end of that agreement period. So there's a lot of protections. When I say revenue predictability, there's protections for partners being built into that. So that's some of the core changes. There's of course other changes with incentives and things like that are rolling out as well.
Now there were price changes for Microsoft 365 announced. I think it was last August, just across the board beyond CSP. I mean, but between that and the changes that you just described, do CSP partners have to, are the licenses and the agreements, the subscriptions they have in place now good until the renewal date, or is there any sort of replatforming they're going to have to do as NCE rolls out?
So to answer that, I'll give you some key dates that are important for partners to remember. And ways that they can avoid. So what you mentioned, that price increase. Microsoft rolled out the Modern Workplace price increase announcement, and then they also rolled out these changes, which is the new commerce experience. And they are two separate things. Unfortunately, they're kind of at the same time, so they can feel like they're all the same thing. And to be honest, if you're an MSP and you're on the impact side of this, it might as well be the same thing, right? So Modern Workplace price increase, just so for those who don't know, is a price increase happening across 6 SKUs. It's things like Microsoft 365 Business, Premium, E3, and a couple others. Those price increases go into effect, if I'm not mistaken, they go into effect at the end of March. But I might be wrong on that. Dave might know, but I believe it's the end of March. So partners have. Is it okay? Okay, good. Yeah. So partners have this price increase that's coming out, but there are ways that they can kick that can down the road a bit. And there are some strategies. So here's some key dates. January 10th is when everything kicked off. Starting on January 10th with your CSP provider is when you can start officially ordering Microsoft 365 through the NCE program. The next key date to remember is March 10th. March 10th is the date when, after that, all new subscriptions you order must be on the new commerce experience platform. You can no longer order any new subscriptions underneath the legacy CSP program. The other important date, which is more aligned to the price increase that we were just talking about, is this date is one of those things that could change and likely will, is the end of March. At the end of March, a promo is officially slated to stop, but I'll get back to that if that actually will happen in just a second. At the end of that period is when a new promo, which is 5% of additional margins that partners can take advantage of, will stop. But that's also right aligned with the new Modern Workplace price increase. And here's why that March 31st date is really important. If a partner decides to move their existing legacy CSP customers over into the new NCE, new commerce experience early, I love all these abbreviations. If they decide to move it over early, they can go ahead and do a couple of things if they do it before the end of March. They can kick the can down the road on Modern Workplace price increase, so they get to skip that for about a year. They can also take advantage of that 5% promo that Microsoft has, and they can get an additional 5% rebate for the next year. And so in doing that, when they move their customers into that new annual agreement, they're gaining 5 points. They're skipping that, what is roughly on average about a 20% price increase across the new 6 SKUs. And they can do all that before March 31st. Now, that date, though, is likely to get pushed back. Microsoft has already said that they might push that back all the way to June, possibly. The other really important date, and there's other important dates, but the other really important date is the end of June. The last day of June is the last time you can renew any of your existing subscriptions on legacy CSP. After that, all renewals have to happen on new commerce experience.
So Matt mentioned that there have been there's been some chatter about this among partners. Some partners are sort of happier about it than others. Some of the dissatisfaction, I assume, is just that this is change. It's a lot to absorb, and people get confused. But what are the elements in here that are maybe disruptive that might potentially be a turnoff to CSP partners?
I mean, the biggest, and you should always take this with a grain of salt from any vendor who tries to speak on behalf of a partner, because I'm biased, right? But in talking with partners, which I talk to a lot, the biggest thing I think is the administrative burden this next year is going to place on partners, because you have effectively you're having to go back into your customer base and resell those customers that you've already sold on a managed service agreement that included 365, and you're now potentially having to part and parcel out one product, which is Microsoft 365, from your managed service agreement, because it might now have new dates or new terms. It has an annual agreement, whereas you might only have month to month with your existing customers. So there's all this administrative burden that's going to place on the partners. And then that's, you take into account that they're also going to have to now talk to their customers about, new ways that they're going to have to purchase, new end dates to agreements, new agreements in general, because, a lot of partners we're speaking with are also rolling out new agreements, separate agreements just for 365, because it's got new terms around it. So the administrative burden, I think, is what we're hearing. If you distill it all down, that's the biggest challenge for partners. The partners who have been the most successful at getting in front of this, messaging their customers starting back in December, and now ahead of the March timeframe. The partners who have been doing that, we have one partner, Able Solutions, out of Alpharetta, Georgia, who has been fantastic. They have entire, they have drip campaigns. They have all sorts of stuff they've rolled out. They've leveraged our assets to roll out to their customer base. So partners who are taking advantage of their vendors' assets that have already pre-built to notify their customers and to sell into their customer base this new model. Those are the ones who I think are going to be able to take advantage of the rebates, take advantage of the incentives, and offset their administrative costs.
Dave, anything that you're hearing from partners about this program that, or maybe that partners watching right now aren't aware of that we should highlight?
So it's a loaded question. The answer is yes. But, I have to make a little quick statement, and that is realize that your view, your lens, the lens that you're looking through really determines if you think this is exciting news or not so exciting news. And, as Justin mentioned, there's some partners that they're just structured to sell CSP and to stay engaged with their client base and to let them know when changes happen. And those partners are doing quite well. And so my point is that there are some great qualities that's coming out of this, and some of them haven't even been mentioned yet, like how a partner gets paid on the back end. There's some extra benefit that wasn't there before. But at the same time that there's good merit, there's also, challenges, like if you were a CSP partner and now you're transitioning over. A good example is it's great that you can offer a 1 year. However, the partner is liable for that 1 year. So the partner is liable directly to Microsoft. Hence, if they sign 1 year term and take advantage of the discounts that Justin talked about, the downside is that if for some reason that client opts to leave that partner, the partner is still responsible for the remaining payments for that 1 year term. And that's really the way this program is structured. For a lot of partners, that's a tough pill to swallow. It just is. And there's also a high watermark that's been introduced, that the number of seats in that year don't come down. There's a high watermark for what your projection is and what your seat count is, that again, the partner is responsible. I think that's probably the price increases are what they are. I mean, come on, everybody has price increases. And this program has been around since, oh my gosh, 6 years under different flavors and different names. The whole cloud initiative program. But we watch pricing go up. Now, the fact that it's almost a double dip, as Justin talked about, meaning it was just natural that they increased the price on 6 SKUs. That's a little confusing because some of those SKUs are quite popular with partners, and other SKUs that are also popular did not have a price increase. So fine, you have to kind of keep track of that on your scorecard. But I think if you wanted to try to poke at some of the noise that's happening in the channel, probably the fact that the price is going up twice, if you will, if you have that lens on, that you're looking at it from that perspective. And then also, if you want to take advantage of the 1 year and 3 year, a lot of partners can't really sign up yet, but the 1 year they can. But then again, they're kind of liable financially on the books for the 1 year. So a lot of partners need to look at how to rewrite their agreements. What will they do if a client leaves? Will they require a client to pay the whole year in advance, which is a break of the MSP model of paying monthly? Or perhaps they'll have the client continue to pay monthly, but in their agreement, if the client opts to leave their services, then that advances the balance owed of that 1 year term. They have to look at all these things that, weren't an issue before.
So that's an excellent sort of recap of what's disruptive, what might be something that partners aren't happy about. I know I am learning a lot about this right now. I'm trying to absorb a lot of facts and figures as you guys are going through this right now. And I'll ask both of you this. I'll just start with you, Dave, since you were just speaking. How well do you think most CSP partners understand all of this at this point? I know for months now, because I first probably started hearing about NCE September-ish, August-ish, something like that. So, the distributors have been putting out the word, Microsoft has been putting out the word. How well does the average CSP partner, do you think, Dave, understand what's happening and what they need to do about it right now?
I can see Dave going, ooh, how do I really?
They don't. And, but let me take a hat off to Justin, AppRiver and his fellow other distributors in our industry. You're right. They're starting to do these webinars so that partners can get up to speed and they can learn, what the program is, how they can take advantage. Like Justin said, if you lock in clients now, you can get some pretty good discounts versus what the increased price is going to be. So, there's a timetable. So the faster the partners do learn about it, the better it's going to be for them and their clients, because they're going to need, 1, time to learn, 2, time to adjust their internal process, meaning within the company, how they're going to handle this. 3, then they need to approach the client and have that meeting with the client to explain the change and the opportunity. And 4, they got to close the business. So, and they have to do those 4 key items before the deadline dates hit. Now, I'll share with you, I got to be so careful. I think I have something like 4 NDAs signed at this point over this particular topic. So I have to be careful certain things that I say because I have to make sure they're public versus my knowledge. But one thing I heard from another partner yesterday, so I'm going to repeat it, is that the date for new onboarding, as Justin said, was March, but they were notified by another distributor that date is being extended, and that date was September 30th. So it looks like some of the dates are moving, is the point. And so when you think that you do know it, go back and revisit it, because and I would imagine that a lot of the distributors are going to have updates. So they're going to have their initial wave of education, which is really great. And I would imagine that there's going to be a second volley. Hey, here's what you need to know. Here's some revised dates. Here's some dates that were extended. So it is still a bit of a good moving target.
Dave, I want to go back to the liability question, because a lot of the things that I was hearing that was negative all kind of revolves around that, which is like we sell, per seat costs monthly to our customers, yet now we're going to take on the liability of annualized contracts that we're on the hook for. Should something happen, should our partner go out of business, there's lots of risk now to partners that weren't there before, which doesn't exist to other types of businesses in the program, right? I mean, if you're buying direct, the risk is on you. If an enterprise is buying it, that the risk is on them. Does it seem fair that those who are in CSP and reselling have to take on that risk?
Well, that's Dave. I'll take this for 1 second. That's if they choose annual. So, it's important to remember that right now we're seeing, yes, most partners are likely going to move their existing client base over to the annual because it keeps their pricing in line roughly with what they have it today, excluding the modern workplace price increase, because that's a whole other thing. But they're likely going to move their existing customer base, but new customers, which are, at least, from everything I've seen, are usually the riskiest, right? Because you don't know them, you don't have an established relationship with them, you don't know what's going to happen with their business in a year. Those customers, you can set them up on month to month, and you don't have to. Even though you are moving them to annual and you are taking the brunt of the risk, you can request upfront that if the customer wants to move to that model, you can, as Dave pointed out, you can set forth new agreement terms that they have to pay a certain amount upfront for the year, that there are certain, certain contractual obligations that they have if they want to choose the annual term. But in 2 to 3 years, when we're on the other side of this, you're going to see lots of partners opting for the month-to-month terms. It's going to be a higher price for sure, but that's just going to be the new norm. So yes, right now we're in the valley, and the valley is painful because you're having to go out. What do I do with these existing customers? And you can't overstate that there are a lot of partners who have a lot of fear around taking on that. But you also have the option for month to month, and you have an option for flexibility when it comes to signing up a new customer. You can choose month to month initially. You can have that as part of your new onboarding process, and then shift to annual once you've gotten to know the customer and you understand, whether or not they're a risk that you want to take on, or whether they're willing to pay up front and shift it to a CapEx versus an OpEx. So there's different things you can do there, but yeah, that's all, that's all like really nice to say, but yes, you're right. It's a ton of risk that partners have to assume if they're going to choose annual over month to month.
Hey, Matt, I'll give you another spin on this. And it's not a bad spin, it's just a perspective. Many years ago, a partner, including us, because I wear that hat as well, we sold antivirus. And we sold antivirus on an annual basis, meaning it was, $45 a seat per year. Somebody had 50 seats, 50 users. We do the math, 45 times 50, there's your invoice. Go ahead and pay it. And a lot of the vendors adopted their pricing model to be monthly in order to kind of match the model of a MSP. And hence, instead of writing a check for $45 and charging the client and getting your margin, we started this, $3 a month cost, and it kind of fit nicely into the invoicing model. But we survived for more than a decade selling on an annual basis, and nobody complained about that. So, as a matter of fact, to this very day, there's a lot of software that you buy and pay on an annual basis. So I think it's really an issue of, if you know the book, Who Moved My Cheese? I think it's really an issue that the disruption is you're disrupting the way that they've structured their business model. And normally if you're going to disrupt it, there should be a positive outcome, meaning there should be a good cause. In this case, like Justin pointed out, Microsoft's got a bigger, a bigger mission, and that's that 17 markets being pushed into 3. So, they got a big mission, and there's, if your only focus is CSP, then sure, you see the fact that you've done something to us that's not good. But if you're that bigger picture of the 17, it's, it's okay. It's just part of the process. So I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying perspective is a huge key in how the partner structures their billing and structures their business. If they're willing to accept the fact that things change all the time in our industry, it's going to be fine. But on the flip side, is it a pain in the cush? Sure it is. So hence people are unhappy.
Can never make anybody happy anymore. So Justin, there's one other aspect that Microsoft was touting that is a positive improvement in this experience as opposed to CSP, and that's around around what Dave said about around billing, that it consolidates a lot of the billing and ends things like mid-month dates. Is that a good positive change that partners will like, or are they just trying to like make up stuff that sounds good but doesn't really matter?
I think that's kind of a TBD right now. I mean, I think we're going to see, there is another, we've talked, and this is not supposed to be a Debbie Downer show, right? Like, this is supposed to be like, the podcast about like just making sure you have knowledge. I think that right now, one of the challenges that if it's not resolved, which Microsoft is well aware of it, is something called co-termination of agreement dates. So right now, if you purchase a subscription, let's say for Business Premium with one of your customers, or for one of your customers, and then 3 months in, they decide they also want some business standard licenses that they want to add on. If you're to do that now underneath the current program, and remember, this program launched 3 days ago, so it's still fairly fresh. But if you were to do that, now, you would have 2 agreement dates, which, feels weird for a partner. We've all talked about this, and they're used to month, and they're used to their own managed service agreement kind of having an annual renewal date. And so now you have multiple agreement dates, which adds complexity around like what happens if a customer leaves you at the end of one of those. Now you're still managing the other one for you. There's all these kind of things it adds. But Microsoft is aware that the co-termination date is an issue. They've said that they're going to resolve that. That's one that I see that right now could be a little bit wonky around the date issue. I haven't heard from partners a lot of stress about billing dates underneath the old program. So I don't know how much of a benefit they gain from a new program. I think that has more to do for most partners who are not direct with Microsoft in how their CSP, their tier one or their direct CSP, their indirect provider like AppRiver, Pax8, Synex, whoever, how they bill them, because that's, we all have our own billing systems that are in between Microsoft, and we've always protected our partners from Microsoft's billing. So I don't really think that's going to be as much of a benefit for them.
I'll give you 2 more pluses really fast to the new program. So one of them is the ability for partners to do mix and match. So they can take different subscription periods within the same company for users and mix and match. So you get some flexibility with that. The second thing is a financial side, and that is under the prior program, the CSP program, the partner kind of got compensated in 2 halves. They received rebate checks, and they also, which came in, monthly, and they also needed to submit. This is the second part. They needed to submit for a good 40% through MDF funds, but you had to request it. You had to go through a bit of a process to get that.
And every 6 months you had to do it again. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you didn't do it, you lost out on 40% of the money. Under the new program, 100% of it comes in that rebate check form without you needing to submit or lose. So in a kind of way, partners that want to do the extra paperwork, legwork, lost out on 40% of the revenue. Then under the new program, they'll get 100%.
Yeah, and there's 2 other things with that, just to tack on what Dave said. So for this year, at least, Microsoft is increasing one of those rebates, the main rebate, which is called Core Rebate. Right now it's 4% of all your sales. You get basically 4% back of all your sales. There's other ones like Strategic Rebate and other ones, but that one is increasing for this year to 5%. Whether or not Microsoft keeps it at 5% for years going forward is unknown, but so they get an extra point, plus they get those 5 points that we talked about if they move prior to March, which is likely going to be extended prior to the end of June. So you're looking at 6 extra points on existing customers that you move into NCE today, which is nothing to shake your head at. We're all used to living on the old days of Exchange, where it was like 60% margins, and so extra 6 points is in this day and age is pretty great. The other thing that happened, Dave has mentioned this several times, and it's totally true. There's always going to be shifting dates on all of these things. One of the things Microsoft had announced initially was that for any clients you had on legacy CSP in October, they would no longer receive, or you would no longer receive as a partner, MPN rebates and incentives for those. They've pushed that date back to the end of December at this point. So they just announced that in a blog post, and it's likely going to be put in Partner Center here, I'm guessing, in the next couple of weeks. But that's another one where, they're trying to give partners enough room to be able to adapt to all of this, because they know, it's a lot of big changes. So yeah, some other benefits on the MCI stuff. And by the way, the new program is called MCI. Instead of Microsoft Partner Rebates, it's MCI, it's Microsoft Commerce Incentives. So when you start seeing that new acronym thrown out, that one's actually a good acronym for you as a partner.
So Justin, I mean, obviously there's a lot to digest here, and I'm sure a lot of partners are still doing that. The clock is ticking. We don't know when it's going to reach zero in March or June or September or whatever, but there is some finite amount of time to figure out what's happening and come up with a strategy for dealing with it. So I mean, parting words, basically, what's your advice to the folks in the audience in terms of what to do next to make sure they're on top of things?
Yeah, so the very first thing that I would suggest is to leverage the largest marketing team you have, which is your vendors. If you're currently purchasing through, through AppRiver, through Pax8, Synex, Tech Data, whoever you're purchasing through, you should reach out to them, or just reach out to me. But you should reach out to them and leverage their collateral. Like for instance, we provide drip campaigns to our partners to help them with messaging that's already geared and built for clients, and then start building a plan to message your clients. Have a internal document that tracks which of your clients are going to have these changes, this modern workplace price increase, so you can get in front of those, because those are the ones with the timeline that you need to get in front of, so you don't get a 20% price increase this year, so you can kick that can down the road for a year. Get in front of those clients first. Make sure to build a messaging plan around that. Make sure to build a sales plan so you can target those. And because I'm always hopeful that partners will do this for themselves, leverage this inflection point as a time. Anytime there's ever an inflection point where you have to talk to your customer about something, cross-sell and upsell them on something. Cross-sell and upsell them. This is an inflection point. Get something more for yourself and for your client out of this at this point, since you have to talk to them. So build a plan, build the messaging, reach out to your vendors to get all of the resources that they've built, that they have from Microsoft, because we've all consolidated what Microsoft has, this deluge of amazing content they put out there, but it's hard to kind of grapple onto it all. Take advantage of it and deliver it to your clients as in a structured manner that'll help you guys as partners to be able to come out on the other side of this better than you are today.
And Rich, if I can add to that, I would give partners 3 direct calls to action. 2 of them are going to be in alignment with what Justin just said. I'm just going to put some order priority to them. And that is, the very first one is reach out to your distribution contact and request the document that they have available. Most of them have a short 2, 3, 4-page summary that explains the detail. And there's more detail we didn't have time to get into. So request that, because that's an email that can happen pretty quick. Number 2 is most of them have a webinar. Sign up for it, because that's when you're going to get a lot of floodgate information that you need to have. Lastly, number 3, having done the first 2, is look at your internal business and decide how you're going to adopt and structure this, meaning how you're going to update your program offering to your clients, i.e., if they leave, you're going to advance the balance owed, because they get to keep using the licenses. You should be paid for it. And today your agreement probably doesn't cover such things. So those would be the fast 3 calls to action that I think would get you a good 85+%, down the corridor.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, we are out of time. It's also important to note too, if you're going to call your customers and tell them that the clock is ticking, tell them they will explode when it's over, and you might get a little bit more out of them. Important stuff to do. Justin, I want to thank you so much for coming on. There's a lot here to go through, and I think we did a really good job scratching the surface and getting people kind of going down the path and getting some idea of what the changes are to be expected and coming down the road. So for those who you mentioned that they can contact you, for those who want to get in touch with you, how can they do that? Where can they find you?
Yeah, I mean, you can always email me at jgilbert@appriver.com, and I'm happy to help you out. And I'm happy to actually I give all partners, whether or not you ever partner with us, because we were commenting on a break that the community is small. I'm happy to just also give you all of our collateral if you never choose to partner with us, just so you can help your business.
Awesome. Great offer, folks. Take advantage of that. And with that, we are going to say goodbye to Justin. Thank you again so much for being on. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to be joined with Mr. Dave Seibert on the other side. We've got more ahead and some fun too. So stick around for that. We will be right back. And we are back now with part 3 of ChannelPro Weekly. Dave Seibert is still with us here on the other side of the interview, which I have to say was a fantastic interview. Dave, thank you so much for being a part of that. It was very helpful having somebody who's also very kind of familiar with NCE and what's going on over there to talk about. And I really think a lot of people got a lot of value out of what we were talking about. So, Rich, do you have any takeaways that you want to highlight from that?
Actually, just one thing that it occurred to me we didn't mention and should, which is that Justin Gilbert actually contributed an article to ChannelPro on this very topic. It ran at some point in the last couple of weeks or so, and we'll include a link to that in the show notes as well. It sort of encapsulates some of the top points that he was talking about with us.
And my takeaway for sure was the ball's moving, meaning this is such a new topic that some of the details and the timetables are still shifting and changing. So when you do think you know it, go back and visit again, because there might be another new announcement.
Yeah, that was sort of the newest thing to me. And honestly, I'm still trying to get all of the rebates and the timing and all that down. But the thing that I really even hadn't heard at all was that, even in the days since January 10th, when this started all becoming official, dates have changed, and clearly they're all still in motion. Yeah. So is there, like, where do you go? And you have different sort of connections than a lot of people in the audience, but is there a particular place in the Microsoft web world where you go to just kind of see the very, very latest updates on that?
So Microsoft does have various blogs, and they do post a lot of this up, but they're so hard to find. They really are. And I think the real answer is the distributors. So Microsoft uses them as the vehicle to reach partners, because most partners need to work with the distributor one way or another. So I would say go to the distributor. That's probably your best bet. And they have webinars, they have white papers. They just have a lot of resource that came from Microsoft and that the distributors putting together themselves.
Excellent stuff. Yeah, awesome, awesome interview. Lots of great things. A lot of great sage advice. So thank you again to Dave and to Justin for all of that. If you skip through it, go back. It's stuff you absolutely need to, because, like, who isn't a Microsoft partner if you're a MSP, right? Like, everybody is. You all have to know this stuff. Very important. So we're gonna move on, Dave. One of the reasons I always get excited when you're on is because, as most know, I used to do a museum kind of pick where I talk about old technology that I owned, because I've got tons of it. Except after 200 some shows, I really did go through most of the stuff that's interesting. And it's like, I could talk about, every network card in that drawer over there, but that's not exactly super exciting. So I love it when someone else is on. We are retooling that segment, folks. We will have some some technology history pieces where I can kind of maybe talk about something that was notable that I don't actually physically own. But Dave Seibert owns lots of really cool old stuff too. So when he's on, it's exciting that we can see what he's got. And Dave has a museum pick lined up for us. Dave, tell us what you have.
Absolutely. First, I got to tease and say that I don't know if it's good or bad that I have various museum picks. Some things were just so hard not to, I couldn't let them go. And I do tease all the time. If I was a car mechanic, I may have a whole bunch of cars in my backyard. But being, electronic junkie gurus, most electronics are pretty small, and therefore hanging on to them is quite easy. I was teasing Matt when he asked me. I said, "Oh, I should have brought this in today because I'm in the office." During the holiday, when I was cleaning up, I came across two vintage pristine copies of Byte magazine from 1979. And boy, those would have been an interesting one. But of course, no, I didn't carry them in today. So I do have another museum pick. I have, which I'll hold up. You can look at them. First, I'll give just 2 seconds of silence to see if you can identify what they are.
And while we give that a silence, we might want to describe them for our audio listeners.
They're rigid. They are metallic. They're fragile. And they have very detailed design on each one. And
another
you can see how thin they are.
Yeah, and another hint, they get cut up into lots of different pieces.
Bingo. And they come in different sizes. This is probably about 2 inches. This is probably about 4 inches. I have one that is 10 inches. So they manufacture them in different sizes, but these are wafers. And one of the clients that we worked with for many years was Rockwell Connexent, also known as Jazz. And they're a fabrication company, and they manufacture chips. And when you manufacture chips, it's a chemical process. And they start with a piece of silicone, and then they put it through chemical processes, sometimes 30, 40 chemical processes. And those chemical processes is what etch the silicone in order to create these chips. And this one that's about 4 inches, I don't know, I can't do fast math here, but there's probably about 60 to 80 individual chips. And those chips will, by machine, all get cut out. And that's what goes inside the ceramic chip, the black ceramic chip that you see that has the legs on it. But the actual chip itself is each one of these very small individual pieces that all get laser cut out.
It's fascinating stuff. And do you happen to know what like processor that is that you are holding?
I have not a clue. And you know, if you look on the back side of it, it just looks like something you'd throw away.
Yeah, it does. It's kind of funny. And you know,
it's one-sided.
One really cool thing that's important to know, because you talk about a lot about the chemical process that go through it. Chip fabrication is a very complex process. So when we talk about like global chip shortages and like that one fabrication plant like burning down to the ground, it costs billions of dollars and lots of time to set up these facilities to make those wafers that you see like right there. So it's if something really disrupts the supply chain, it is a long process to get back on course.
Yeah, and I'll tell you a little fun factoid. And that is that we all know that certain chips have different speed elements, like old school on a modem. You might have had a 1200 baud modem or a 9600 baud modem. You get the idea. Our processors, they have different speeds. So failure rates on chips are actually quite high. And so when they create these, they know that they're going to have different grades, just like you do in diamonds and gems. You have different grades of quality, of perfection, of flaws. So once they dice these up, they're actually going to be tested, and some of them will rank at, quote, that 9600 baud speed, and some of them will only perform at 2400 baud, or take it to advanced processors today. You know, some of them may pass at 3.5 gigahertz and another only at 3. Anyway, the difference in models and speeds are based on the failure rate of the various chips that they produced and the rate of the speed that it will run at. So failures are quite common, and that's how you get your lower level performance to the market, is stepping down the QA, the testing of these. It's not 100% that way, but there is a lot of truth to that one.
There is a lot of truth to that. And actually, those who are really big into overclocking know that chip manufacturers tend to perfect architectures towards the tail end of their life. So a lot of the times later on, if they're going to release a new architecture and this one's been around a while, you can probably buy a lower grade chip and overclock it big time, because most likely they still have to sell all those models. So sometimes better chips towards the end of the life end up in lower grade processors, and you can unlock that performance if you have. So processor manufacturing is just a really, really cool and wacky business.
So totally geek moment here. Two favorite things for a geek to do is, number one is to go through an Amazon fulfillment center, because it's filled with robotics and cool stuff that you want to go see, and they actually have tours. Number two is you got to go to a processor chip fabrication manufacturing facility and check out how the process works. It is bunny outfit clean rooms, but they do have the ability to see how the process works, and those are two of the top fun geek things to do.
Very, very cool. Well, thank you so much, Dave, for sharing that with us. And normally when we do a museum pick, we also do a tech pick as well. And what better way to tie this together than to talk about a newer processor from Intel. Intel has released their 12th gen desktop chips. I mean, that wasn't yesterday, but it's still very, very recent that these come out. So my tech pick today is going to be the Intel Core i7 12700K. Here's a shot of it here on Newegg. I was just trying to find it real quick. But there's a 12 core, 3.6 gigahertz LGA 1700 processor. Has some of the better 770 series of internal graphics that's in there. 25 megs of L3 cache. It has a turbo automatic overclocking capabilities are built in. It is a K, so it's unlocked, so you can also overclock it manually yourself. So a lot of benchmarks are really starting to hit on these. Lots of good stuff to talk about. So that's a new desktop processor. If you want to go check out the Intel 12th gen Core i7 processor, and that's a reasonable price. There's Core i9s and stuff too, but this one is in the realm of affordability for a lot of people. So that's a cool one to check out. Dave, how many you got?
You know, I was going to add in there, the thing that's fascinating about all these new processors that are coming out is that slice between threads and cores, meaning some of them, they're all, the processor may be the same speed, but they divided it into 12 cores or 16 cores. And then, you have the speed for each of the threads. And then you got to figure out what your application is. Are you a diehard gamer, or are we sitting here with, 20 browser windows open running virtual machines, or what are we going to do with the darn thing? And that helps figure out which processor type is going to be exciting to buy and run.
It's true. And the way they design cores now is kind of interesting, because you used to just have like, okay, well, this is a 4-core processor, and those cores are all the same, but now they're like making performance cores and efficient cores and optimizing cores for media and for digital encoding and for compute, and so they're building lots of other types of cores into one chip to like you said, so you can optimize it kind of for what you're looking to do, which is kind of neat, and make them more power efficient and that kind of thing. So neat stuff. Yeah, modern day processors, Dave. Crazy stuff. Rich, we're not done yet though. We are going to break down what we might have missed and what we might see coming up. Rich, tell us about it.
Well, the place to go if you want to catch up with stuff that may have slipped by you would be our weekly In Case You Missed It post, which appears every Friday on ChannelProNetwork.com, written by our own James Gaskin. This week, Dan Schiappa. Dan Schiappa, it's a name that's probably familiar to you, Matt. He's been on the program with us a couple of different times as the Chief Product Officer at Sophos. As of this week, he is the Chief Product Officer at Arctic Wolf, which is interesting. Didn't get a chance to talk with him about that, but it'll be interesting to catch up with him. They've got a new Chief Marketing Officer at Datto as of this week. And then James has a little update for you about how some law enforcement officials in Italy used the Google Street View application to find a missing mafia don. You can't make this stuff up. So coming up, what's coming up next week? Well, we mentioned Dave's SMB Tech Fest event, January 20th. We'll have a link to information about that in the show notes. Next week is also the National Retail Federation event in New York, Retail's big show, as they call it. So I guess there's probably going to be a lot of retail IT news coming out. The SANS Institute, very well-respected security training organization, is doing their first security conference of the year. They're doing it virtually in that case. And then there will be a little bit of post-CES hardware news coming from a big name in the industry, and I can't tell you what kind of hardware or what the name is, but stay tuned to ChannelProNetwork.com and you'll get all the details next week.
Sounds awesome. And I'd also like to say a big thank you, not only to Justin Gilbert for joining us, but also to Mr. Dave Seibert, who coming back and co-hosting with us. David, again, great way to start off 2022. Thanks so much for being here and doing the show with us. For those who want to get in touch with you, learn more about you, where can they find you? Where can they go?
Well, if you really want some bedtime reading, daveseibert.com has a lot of my activities. And I'm also on LinkedIn. Reach out to me anytime.
Perfect. And for those who are interested in the SMB Tech Fest, that link again where they can go and check that out.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can register for the event. It's 100% virtual, so you can attend from anywhere. And just go to smbtechfest.com/go/worldwide. So wherever you're located, wherever you're listening, you can register and partake and join us.
Fantastic. Thanks again for coming on. What a show to kick off 2022, folks. And we've got a lot ahead for you coming up late every week-ish this year. So the best thing you can do, again, subscribe, go to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, you name it, we're there. Subscribe everywhere, so we are automatically showing up on your devices and you can listen to us anywhere you go. We would love for you to watch too. If you go to YouTube, the ChannelPro Network channel on YouTube, so find us there, subscribe, hit the bell so you get notifications, leave a comment and a good rating at all of these respective places. That would be great. And hey, tell a coworker, a friend, someone else in the business about ChannelPro Weekly. Don't just have it all to yourself. Give yourself something to talk to with other people.
And I think it's only appropriate that we say Happy New Year to everybody, because this is the premiere 2022 episode, right?
It is, yes, and absolutely a happy 22. Hopefully it is a great 2022. 2021 was not much better than 2020, but it was a little bit better. But 2022 will hopefully be awesome. So yeah, happy holidays, happy new year. It's going to be a blast. And where should you go each and every day in 2022? Start off your day at channelpronetwork.com. There you'll find the latest articles, news, white papers, downloads, resources, anything and everything you need to know to help you stay on top of what's going on in the IT channel and help you grow your business. It's very, very important stuff. Make sure you check that out. Follow ChannelPro Network on all the social channels. Check out our event site, events.channelpronetwork.com, and join us for those. And folks, we will be back with episode 211 next week. See you then.